Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining us today. We like to seek the blessings and kind compassion of Radha Madhav, Radha Shyamsundar, Krishna Balaram, Gaurita Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj on this wonderful occasion of Ekadashi. And we also seek the blessings of the assembled Vaishnavas. And today we wanted to do a quick overview of 11th Canto, chapter number 21. So this is a very interesting verse from this chapter.
Mam vidate abhite mam vikalpayopayate tvaham etavam sarva vidhartha sapta astaya mam vidam maya matam anudyante patishidya prashitati. Translation: I'm the ritualistic sacrifice enjoined by the Vedas, and I'm the worshipable deity. It is I who am presented as various philosophical hypotheses. It is I alone who am then refuted by philosophical analysis. The transcendental sound vibration thus establishes me as the essential meaning of all Vedic knowledge. The Vedas elaborately analyzing all material duality as nothing but my illusory potency ultimately completely negate this duality and achieve their own satisfaction.
Yeah, so let's see the context of this within this chapter. But very interesting how Krishna is describing where he sits and how the Vedas, although analyzing all the material dualities as nothing, but his illusory potency ultimately completely negating this duality and achieving their own satisfaction. This is the beauty of the devotees. This is what they do. So Lord Krishna's explanation of the Vedic path, this is the title of the chapter, there are persons who are unfit for all three of the yoga for processes, karma, jnana, bhakti. And these people are also not favorable, inimical to Krishna. They are attached to sense gratification. They're dominated by fruitive activities. Fruitive activities basically means doing something for something in return, aimed at fulfillment of their desires, material desires. This chapter describes their faults in place of time, place, time, substance, and beneficiary of actions. So it's a little bit technical. Anyway, Krishna said, for those who are perfect in knowledge and devotion to the Lord, there are no materially good qualities or faults. So those who are pure devotees, they don't see good or bad. They're beyond the duality, like we discussed yesterday. Those who give up these methods for achieving me, e.g. bhakti, and instead being moved by material senses, cultivate insignificant sense gratification, certainly undergo the continual cycle of material existence. So one who gives up bhakti, one who doesn't take to bhakti, will continue to remain in this world because they are now attached towards enjoying their senses. For those who are inimical to spiritual life and are devoted to this fruitive work for fulfillment of lusty desires, in order to understand what is proper in life, one must consider purity and impurity, distinguish between good and bad. And to ensure one's physical survival, one must recognize what is auspicious and inauspicious. So these dualities are important for those who are not on the path of bhakti, because you have to distinguish, is this good to do? Is this not good to do? But that person who is in bhakti, he's simply engaged in serving the Lord. So whether it's good or bad is not even a consideration. It's always going to be transcendently good. So considerations of purity and impurity. The consideration of purity and impurity and auspiciousness and inauspiciousness are made in terms of place of activity, time, objects used, the performer, the mantras chanted, and particular activity. So we're going to go through those different factors. If these factors are purified, then there's dharma. or virtue. If they're not, there's adharma. So place, purity and impurity are distinguished by such facts as presence of black deer. Why black deer? Deer are considered important for the sadhus because deer skin is used by the sadhus to sit on to meditate. Of course, that deer is not killed. Naturally, when the deer dies, the skin is used. The skin is regarded to be quite auspicious for the sadhus. So where there's no presence of black deer, it's not really auspicious place. Where cleanliness and purificatory rites are neglected, where meat eaters are prominent, where the earth is barren, these are all contaminated places. So if we're living in these areas, these places, then our chances of cultivating bhakti are less, and these, they don't lead to, they don't give you the inspiration, and even to do any different types of karma yoga or astanga yoga, very difficult in these places. And then there's consideration of time. There are distinctions of purity and impurity, either in terms of the time itself or in terms of the specific relation with various objects for the performance of one's prescribed duties. That time which impedes the performance of one's duties is considered impure. So the disease in this world, especially in the West, is I have no time. So busy with trying to earn a living in order to provide for the family and also to engage in sense enjoyment. There's no time for spirituality. So it's very unfortunate. Object. An object's purity or impurity is established by application of another object, by words, by rituals, by effects of time according to relative magnitude. Various objects such as grains, wood, wooden utensils made out of bone, thread, liquids, objects derived from skin, fire, earthly objects are all purified by time or by the wind or by fire, by earth, by water, either separately or in combination. So again, having different objects, if the objects lead us towards sense enjoyment, then that's really not going, like the phone. The phone is fine on its own, there's no problem with the phone. But if we misuse it, then it's a problem, it's impure. But if we use it for proper purpose, then it's pure. So our intention is very important. Performer, the performer can be cleansed by bathing, charity, austerity, age, personal strength, purificatory rituals, prescribed duties, and above all, by remembrance of the Lord. Mantras, when one's knowledge of mantras is received from the lips of a bona fide spiritual master, one's mantra is considered pure, and one's work is purified by offering it onto the Lord. So that's the other one. That's the sixth one. There's 6 things. One of them is, I think it's work, isn't it necessarily? Particular activity, place of activity, particular activity. Yeah, our work, basically. So that's the 6th factor that Krishna refers to. So mantras, again, there's so many mantras, but there are certain mantras which are prescribed for chanting in this age in order to connect us with the Supreme Lord. And those mantras are extremely powerful, especially when they're received from a guru. Then those mantras become a pathway back to the Supreme Lord. But then there are also other mantras which are made up. They're either made up, somebody's made up a mantra because it sounds good. It's almost like a musical affair rather than a spiritual affair. That's not going to have much impact. Okay, the distinction between material piety and sin can be blurred. The Lord explains here that material piety and sin are always relative considerations, as they may transform according to place, time, beneficiary, and so on. For example, one who abandons his wife and children is certainly irresponsible and thoughtless. However, if one takes sannyas and remains fixed on a higher spiritual platform, he's considered to be a most saintly person. So it's the same act, right? You're abandoning the children, the family. But one is considered sinful, another is considered pious. So it's all relative. The distinction between them can be very blurred. Piety and sin therefore depend on particular circumstances and are at times difficult to distinguish. Should I do my duty? Arjuna asked Krishna. Should I kill or should I go to the forest and not kill? Killing is so bad. What should I do? And then the whole Bhagavad Gita unfolds to explain to Arjuna how to live in this world. So, one who accepts material sense objects as desirable becomes attached to them. Right? So if we're seeing a car, we really like this Mercedes, and eventually we'll develop such an attachment to it that we have to have it. Otherwise, our life, there's something horribly missing if we don't have this particular material object. So from attachment, lust arises. So lust means we want that object. And this lust creates quarrel among men. May not have the money, so we have to work harder. We have to borrow money. We have to fight with the family members because, or we might steal the money. Fight with the family members because we want to spend the money on the Mercedes and they want to spend it on something else, like food. From quarrel arises intolerable anger, followed by the darkness of ignorance. So a very similar verse is given in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna again. Was it 462? Riyansh, you know the verse, don't you? How's it go? Dhyayato pamasa, how's it go? Dhyayato visaya pumsa sangaste supajayate sangat sanjayate kamat kamat koda pajayate. So you're saying a very similar thing. Sangat, when you see an object, you develop attachment to it. And from that attachment, lust develops, from lust, anger, and then from anger, you lose your memory, and then you fall into this pit of darkness. So this ignorance overtakes a man's broad intelligence. A person bereft of real intelligence is considered to have lost everything. Deviated from the actual purpose of his life, he becomes dull, just like a dead person. He cannot recognize himself or others, living uselessly. So this is, if we're not careful, we can go down this path. However, work performed for sense gratification is not beneficial. The descriptions of fruitive benefits offered, which are, so these are offered in the Vedas, right? The Vedas offers inducements, just like promises of sweets to a child to persuade them to take the medicine. Sweets are not good for children, right? Not good for anybody, although we love them. But sometimes we may say to a child, yes, here, have a sweet, and they can have a medicine as well. It's like a bribe. So it's like a bribe to have these fruitive activity benefits described in the Vedas. It's done there so that we can become religious, somewhat religious. In various Phalashrutis are actually meant to help one gradually cultivate a taste for higher benefit. So that's the whole idea. Get involved with the Vedas. Okay, it prescribes some fruitive activity. Fine, let's do the sacrifice. At least we're acting in accordance with scripture. And then in due course of time, we realize, actually, no, I need to do my spiritual activities without any thing back in return. I want to just do it to please the Lord. But persons of inferior intelligence take the flowery benedictory verses of the scriptures to be the actual purport of the Vedas. We should not get fooled by these activities of sacrifice for the devatas, thinking that this will give us ultimate happiness. They won't. Krishna says himself in the Bhagavad Gita that what the demigods can offer you is very temporary and it is limited, very limited. But persons of inferior take the flowery statements of the Vedas that promise material rewards, promotion to heaven, to be the actual purpose of the Vedas, not understanding that the actual purpose of the Vedas, Vedic knowledge, and what is the actual purpose of Vedic knowledge? To bring us closer to God, the Supreme Lord. Due to lust, anger, greed, they mistake mere flowers to be actual fruit of life. Taking pleasure in violence, they cruelly slaughter innocent animals in sacrifice for their own sense gratification, and thus worship demigods, forefathers, etc. Such passion for violence, however, is never encouraged within the process of Vedic sacrifices. In the Vedas, it does allow sacrifices, but we have to understand the purpose of them are to slowly, gradually purify the performer in order to make them qualified to serve the Lord. These are not in themselves the actual reason for the Vedas. The reason for the Vedas is to bring us closer to God. Those established in material passion, goodness, and ignorance worship the particular demigods and other deities headed by Indra, who manifest the same modes of passion, goodness, and ignorance. The worshippers of demigods think, we shall worship the demigods in this life, and by our sacrifice, we shall go to heaven and enjoy there. When that enjoyment is finished, we shall return to this world and take birth as great householders in aristocratic families. So the concept of God, the concept of the Supreme Lord, the concept of the spiritual world is missing from this reasoning. Now, Vedas ultimately reveal the living entity as pure spirit soul. The transcendental sound of the Vedas is very difficult to comprehend, right? And it manifests on different levels within the prana, the senses and the mind. Thus, Vedic sound is unlimited, very deep, unfathomable, just like the ocean. But one has to understand the purpose of the Vedas. And that can be done by understanding the instructions given in the Bhagavad Gita and also in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's very, very simple. The whole purpose of the Vedas is to connect us with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because we've become disconnected. And that's why we're in this world, separate from God, forgetting Him. And everything that is given in the Vedas is given for different walks of life, people from all different types of walks of life, so that they can come gradually up to this level of trying to connect with the Supreme. The Lord personally establishes the Vedic sound vibrations in the form of Omkar within all living entities. It is thus perceived subtly. The Vedic sound branches out in thousands of directions, adorned with the different letters expanded from the syllable Om, the consonants, the vowels, etc. The Ved is then elaborated by many verbal varieties expressed in different meters. The Vedic meters are Gayatri, Ushnik, sounds like the German now, or the Russian language, Anushtup, Brihati, Pankti, Trishtup, Jagati, Ati Chandana, Atyashti, Ajitagati, Ati Virat. So these are the different Vedic meters. We've never ever gone through them except for the Gayatri. There's a specific meter that these mantras are sung in. And if we get the wrong meter, then there is no impact of the mantra.
It could mean something different.
Or it could mean something totally different. only the Lord actually understands the confidential purpose of Vedic knowledge. Thus, no one knows what the Vedas are actually prescribing in the ritualistic injunctions of karma kanda, or the object is being indicated in the formula of worship found in the upasana kanda, or discussed through the various hypotheses in the jnana kanda section of the Vedas. These are very, very hard to comprehend, and we shouldn't even try to make an effort, because our lives are very short. So then, this is what the verse that we read. Krishna is the ritualistic sacrifice enjoined by the Vedas. He is the worshipable deity. And then he says, it is I who am presented as various philosophical hypotheses. And it is I alone who am then refuted by philosophical analysis. The transcendental sound vibration thus establishes Krishna as the essential meaning of all Vedic knowledge. The Vedas elaborately analyzing all material dualities as nothing but his illusory potency. So this was a little bit technical, this chapter, and not so easy to grasp. But if we can simply understand that sometimes in the Vedas, there are certain things that are recommended for sacrifice, perhaps even an animal sacrifice, in order to please a devata, to get something from the devata. If we can understand that this is not the purpose of the Vedas, that part of the Vedas is just to bring the various followers of Sanatana Dharma to a higher level. But if we can understand the highest level of the Vedas is to put us in connection with the Supreme Lord, then we will understand the purpose of the Vedas. Are there any questions or any comments? Okay, so we can stop there. Srimad Bhagavatam.
Just one thing.
Yes, Parveen.
When you say demigod, what does that mean?
Ah, very good question.
You keep saying quite a lot of time demigod.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Couple more thing.
Yes.
It said something about we don't have time for anything. That's true. And something else you said about like a person has got children and kids, and he still wants to be sent. Is that right? Leave the children and go and do the bhakti.
That's not doing their duty.
Yeah, that is 100% true. Because if he has got children and his wife, I think he should look after the children and the wife, not correct. Go and do the bhakti.
Oh, no. That's not correct thinking, Parveen. Because ultimately, the most important thing that connects us is to be connected to God. Now, if one is thinking, my children, my wife, they are a burden to me and I have to go and do bhakti. Yes, that's rubbish thinking. But what one can do is all of our life, we can arrange it in such a way that we can still do bhakti and look after the children. Nobody should be stopped from doing bhakti. That's the most important thing. But it shouldn't be that I am thinking these people are stopping me from doing my bhakti. We can engage our children and our spouses to do bhakti with us. This is the point. But nobody should be stopped from doing bhakti, because bhakti is what's connecting us, going to connect us to the Supreme Lord. That is very, very important. So somebody might take sannyas, as long as they're doing it for the right reason and they're qualified to become sannyas, they're allowed to do that. They can leave the family. Of course, ideally, the children should be grown up so that they can look after their mother. That's the whole idea. If that is not the case, and somebody takes sannyas prematurely, that is not a good thing.
No good thing, yeah.
And demigods, they are the servants of Krishna, devatas. You know them as devatas. Lord
Devatas.
Shiva, Lord Brahma,
Okay.
Lord Indra,
Yes, sir.
Vayu, Ganesh,
Goodness.
then
Durga
Durga Mata, then Yamraj. They're all servants. They're great servants. But they're
They are
not.
called as the demigods.
We call them demigods. They're known as
English.
devatas. Yeah,
Okay.
devatas.
Thank you.
Demigods is a little bit of almost like an insulting name. But
Yeah.
it's not meant to be an insulting name.
No,
These
no, no, no.
devatas are actually wonderful devotees of the Lord. They're serving him by looking after this universe, by being administrators of this universe. But they're not the ultimate. And some people, they actually think that the devatas are the supreme, and they worship the devatas in order to get some money, in order to get a good wife, in order to get a good car, you know, material things. It's not a good thing.
No.
So we try to avoid worship of devatas, but we respect the devatas because they're great devotees of the Lord.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking the clarification. Huh? Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to know, you know.
Yes, it's very good. Good you ask. Very good you ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.